Do you know what's great about embracing the fact that I have a gaming YouTube channel that's increasingly becoming some sort of strange gaming diary? The realization that I could sit down and start writing about anything I want on a whim. Like, I followed up a 70-minute long video about one of PlayStation 4's biggest cult classic games with a video about an incredibly niche indie FMV mystery game. And in the middle of that, I decided to gush about Hades' God mod mechanic in a shorter essay because I was still playing and loving every second of Supergiant's best ever game. There's not really any rhyme or reason to the topics of my videos anymore, which is incredibly freeing, because if I have an idea, I could just sit down and make that idea into a video. I've stopped worrying about embargoes or schedules or rushing myself or cutting corners or hammering out some content just for the sake of it. The upside is I have about half a dozen things going on at once. The downside is I have about half a dozen things going on at once. I am, at all times, simultaneously close to finishing something and nowhere near finishing a bunch of other things. Anyway, today I want to talk about water levels in games and how much I hate them. Look, okay, there's a method to my hatred here. Just hear me out, okay? You know what one of the scariest things in video games is? Playing the chemical plant in Sonic the Hedgehog 2 and getting to the bit with the moving blocks that you have to jump up while underwater, or whatever the purple stuff is. It's probably chemicals, actually, now that I think about it. The platforms are hard to jump on, you're moving slow because you're underwater, your jumping is floaty because you're underwater, it's hard to see because you're underwater, and you're drowning because you're underwater. And then the oh shit, Sonic is drowning, look out music starts blasting out of the speakers like a fucking death march. I played Sonic the Hedgehog 2 when I was like 7 years old. That shit stays with you for the rest of your life. Anyway, while I'm talking about one of the most traumatic moments I've ever experienced in video games, aside from all the harassment, transphobia, homophobia, fat shaming, and trans misogyny, YouTubing about games is great. I feel like I've hit on just about every mechanical reason why I just don't like water levels in video games. I promise this isn't just a hit piece about the Water Temple and Ocarina of Time. And I totally could spend the rest of this video going in depth about why, from a mechanical standpoint, I find water levels to be an annoyance. The restricted or vastly changed movement, the lack of vision, the enforced panic and time constraints of slowly drowning, and just really hammer home why, in my opinion, all water levels can get in the sea. But instead, I want to take a hard left and talk about something very specific and very personal to me. I want to talk about the fact that I have thalassophobia, and it's so bad it impacts me while I'm playing video games. So, what is thalassophobia? Well, apart from being a really fun word to put into a video essay script to say out loud multiple times, thalassophobia is an irrational fear of deep bodies of water. Thalassophobia can include fear of being in deep bodies of water, fear of the vast emptiness of the sea, of sea waves, sea creatures, and fear of distance from land. It's not specifically a fear of drowning. I mean, I feel like a fear of drowning doesn't really need a specific phobia because, like, honestly, who wants to drown to death? And it's different from hydrophobia, which is an aversion to water that develops in people with late stage rabies, and aquaphobia, which it's commonly mistaken for, even by me earlier in my life trying to describe my phobia to people, which is a fear of getting close to any body of water. I'm not sure when my thalassophobia started to develop because I feel like it's something that's just been a constant presence in my life. I know it was exacerbated by the fact that I've almost drowned. Twice. Once when I was learning to swim because I had a dickhead middle school teacher who wouldn't even notice when one of his students was literally drowning right in front of him because I had not yet completed the quote learning to swim portion of the swimming lessons, and he thought it'd be a great idea to literally throw me in the deep end despite my protests. And I'm not misusing the word literally there. There was also this really weird incident on a beach in Spain when I was on a family holiday as a teenager where we were playing with a beach ball in the famously shallow sea and the ground suddenly gave way underneath me. I don't know, maybe I'd finally found some quicksand. All the TV shows from when I was a kid made quicksand out to be a really big deal for some reason. Or maybe Cthulhu found me. The thing is, I could vividly remember thalassophobia being a part of my life much earlier. In fact, my first memory of feeling anxious and fearful of an ocean goes all the way back to the Sega Mega Drive and Echo the Dolphin. I was mildly uncomfortable but generally okay playing the earlier levels of the game that mostly took place in the shallower water. But I also very vividly remember feeling genuine fear during the open ocean sections of the game. At the time, I was a kid, and kids are dumb, so I didn't understand why. Obviously, now I do, but it was really disconcerting when I was like 8 years old. In fact, I just googled it to make sure it was actually Echo the Dolphin that I was remembering, and looking at the screenshots gave me a pang of anxiety. And if you're saying to yourself, wowzers, that sounds kind of dumb, yeah, I agree. That's what makes it an irrational fear and a pain in the arse. For me, thalassophobia mostly takes the form of a sense of overwhelming panic. Another example from my earlier childhood years that I can recall with perfect clarity comes from Tomb Raider 2's 7th level. It's called 40 Fathoms, which should give you some indication as to why it's set off for thalassophobia and she's panic attacking a teenage Amy. And it sees Lara starting the level in the middle of the open ocean. I can't tell you what happens next, because that's as far into Tomb Raider 2 as I've ever gotten. I literally had a panic attack and left the room, leaving the game running and Lara Croft stuck in a never-ending cycle of drowning in the ocean, until I eventually came back, turned the PlayStation off, and decided to play something less terrifying, like Silent Hill. There are tons of games I've never played or had to abandon simply because my thalassophobia is so powerful that I can't manage it. It's pretty easy to deal with in real life because I very rarely find myself in a situation where I'm in a body of deep water, and as long as I can stand a little ways back from the ocean, I can go to the beach no problem. One of my fondest memories is going to the beach with a couple of my friends for ice cream a little while ago. Remember when we used to be allowed to go outside with other people? Those were the days. But with video games, it's more difficult to manage effectively because of their fantastical nature and ability to put you into situations you wouldn't ordinarily find yourself in out in the real world. Like I once tried to play Bioshock despite my thalassophobia because everyone kept telling me it was an amazing game, but I couldn't even swim to the lighthouse at the beginning of the game due to the fear and panic that the opening causes me. I know it's irrational, and I know it can't hurt me, but that doesn't stop my dumb brain from dumbing out and causing an overwhelming wave of panic to set in. But here's where it gets even weirder, because there are some ocean-set games I'm fine with. I am, for the most part, perfectly comfortable playing Sea of Thieves, which is some of the best and most realistic water effects in video games. I think it's because I never actually have to go into the water. And if I ever do, a merman spawns right beside me and lets me teleport back to my boat. Sunless Sea, one of the best games of the past decade, FYI, is another game I can be totally fine playing. Again, probably because you never actually have to go into the ocean. You're just controlling a boat from a top-down perspective, sailing along the top of it. I mean, there is a level of fear involved in that game, but that mostly comes from the unknowable, Cthulhu-esque horrors awaiting you at every turn. Also, Mania, the game that I've probably had footage of playing over the majority of this video, is fine for me because, at least for the sections of the game that I played, you mostly stick to the shallow waters. Shout out to the publisher for sending me a code for that game last year. But for every Sunless Sea or Sea of Thieves, there's a Shadow of the Tomb Raider, a game I had to quit playing thanks to an underwater stealth section involving piranhas and air pockets. Or Abzu, an otherwise chilled ocean exploration game with no danger whatsoever, except that it's set in the ocean and triggers my thalassophobia. Shit, I was playing Grounded with a friend a while ago and had to get her to complete an underwater section of the storyline for me because. No. The most interesting experience I've had trying to play an underwater set game in recent years was Soma. Being a big fan of Amnesia, I wanted to check out that developer's next game. So I did, figuring I'd knock out almost immediately. But I actually managed to play through a lot of it. Most of the scariest moments of the game take place inside an underwater research base with few to no windows. And for a while I was able to cope with the ocean floor segments of the game because I could by and large stare at the ground as I navigated. And plus I was wearing a diving suit so my air supply wasn't an issue. It wasn't the most comfortable I've ever been playing a game, but I was coping fairly decently with the fear and anxiety. And Soma is a horror game, so a level of fear and anxiety is to be expected. But then there was a late game section where you have to navigate a completely pitch black section of the ocean with the world's crappiest head mounted light while being attacked by unseen forces. And I had a panic attack so bad I had to leave the house and walk away from my PC or PlayStation. I can't actually remember what platform I played Soma on. And that's it. That's my story of thalassophobia and how it affects the games I play. I'm not trying to lobby for change in video games or demand less games be set underwater or anything like that. I just thought it was an interesting thing to make a video about. It's a problem that I imagine is incredibly rare amongst gamers, and for me, the best way to manage it is to simply avoid it. I tried confronting it head on and working through it, to no real avail. It just means I'll never finish Tomb Raider 2, or Bioshock, or anything like that. And that's fine. I mean, there's plenty of games that stick to dry land for me to play.